If you knew you were enough, what would your life look like? What would love look like? This is the Enough Factor broadcast, where we're redefining what makes you enough in life and in love. Now here's your host, Suzette Birnall. Hello and welcome to my Enough Factor podcast. It's your life coach and relationship solutionist, Suzette Birnall, and we have a wonderful episode for you today. But I want to say first, thank you. Thank you for those who always tune in week after week, because that's, you know what, without you, I wouldn't even have a podcast. And I also know that out of all the wonderful podcasts out there that you could be listening to, you decided to listen to me. And that makes me feel pretty darn special. The reason we're here is because you keep coming back for more. So I must be saying something that resonates with you. Now, if you're new, then I want you to know something. This podcast is to help you to redefine what makes you enough on your own terms. Because I'm telling you, if you don't define your enoughness for yourself, somebody else will define it for you. Can I get an amen? Okay. But the way that we do it is we amplify what I call 3 critical factors of enoughness. And they are your voice, your value, and your vision. Today, to help me to do that is my special guest, my P2P sister, Miss Alexia Smith. And I am so thrilled because we've been trying to get this going for a while. Alexia is the owner of the Divine Perseverance and a coach, psychoeducator, and licensed mental health counselor. The cornerstone of her work is to help women uncover the divine lessons in their disappointments so they can create the futures they deserve with optimism and joy. She provides coaching and counseling services for individuals and groups and specializes in grief, childhood trauma, eating disorders in the Black community, and spirituality. As a survivor of childhood physical and sexual abuse, parental homicide, and depression, she hopes to help other kindred spirits, one of which I am, who have broken parts of themselves that need restoration. So I want you to join me in giving an Enough Factor podcast welcome to none other than my friend, Alexia Smith. Welcome, Alexia.
Thank you, Suzette. Hello to everyone out there in podcast land. Suzette, thank you so much for having me. Thank you for that introduction. It's beautiful. Thank you so much. So glad we're finally here.
I am glad we're here because y'all, Alexia did something that very few people that I know have done. She decided she was going to just go and move on me. As soon as I got used to her, she ups and decides where's she going to go? Mexico. She goes to Mexico. So she kissed America goodbye.
I was having a hard time. Look, and one of the things I needed to know is that I was enough to get up from a table where love was no longer being served. And in that moment, I needed to get away from the U.S. And it has really been a loving choice for me. And so I think I'm so much more equipped better to serve everyone. And, you know, I'm getting my vitamin D and learning my Spanish. So it's been a good move for me.
I am so glad. I've been looking forward to this because also listeners, Lexi and I had a deep conversation all the way back when Will and Jada were having their thing on the red table, where she talked about her entanglement. And we originally were going to talk about that, but I think we wore that out on Instagram. Don't you think we did?
We did. I think we did. Yes. And, you know, I have moved on to new entanglements somehow or another during that period. And you don't know this. I was searching something entanglements on YouTube related, and I found this website where these people who save sea lions who are stuck in entanglements. they chase the sea lions and cut the cords off of them, and it's taking care of sea lion entanglements. And that is the entanglements that I have been on lately. I watch it every night before I go to bed, chasing sea lions and saving them from sea entanglements. Yes.
Well, I think we would all agree that that's a better entanglement than the one that
That's a
she
better
was
entanglement.
talking about.
Yes. Yes.
So
That
chase
one was
those sea lions.
Yes. Chase the sea lions. Get them out of those
Entanglements. Well, listen.
Absolutely.
I always like to start out my podcast by asking what I call a truth and dare question. Now, the good news is it's not like the traditional truth or dare question. The bad news is you don't get to decide.
Okay. So do I have to do the truth or is it the dare?
Oh, honey, I have combined the two. So.
Oh, wow. Okay, I'm ready.
You're ready. So here goes.
Okay.
What is the truth that your relationship required you to see and dared you to take radical action about?
Oh. Repeat that one more time. Wow, that's a good one. One more time.
Yeah. What is a truth that your relationship required you to see and dared you to take radical action on?
I would say the truth that my relationship with me is more important. It's the most important relationship in my life. And I had to radically decide to make the same commitments, give the same investment, and give the same amount of grace and love to myself that I was trying to give to others. I had to make that radical decision.
Isn't that true, though? I think that's true for all of us because that is the most important relationship.
Exactly. And, I think that for me, historically, I found myself in a lot of relationships where I wanted to prove how good of a woman I was. Not even necessarily just for romantic relationships or even friendships. I'm the best friend, I'm the best family member, etc. And, if we're talking about dating and things of that nature, we have the tendency to really do our darnest to show up like, oh, I'm just this great catch. For me, I'm a Southern girl. It didn't matter who you were. You get cooked for. You didn't have to earn it. You're getting full course meals and everything. For me, it was, with me being a counselor, always trying to support people mentally, this kind of commitment to doing everything that I can to help others heal. And everything was really all about just, hey, look at me. Look at this amazing person that I am. Look at how committed I can be to you, regardless of your stuff, etc. But then I realized that I wasn't giving that same level of commitment to myself. And so it's no wonder that a lot of my relationships would fail because my attention was on loving someone else rather than loving myself. And if I'm not loving myself, I'm useless to love someone else, if that makes sense.
It makes perfect sense. And I think sometimes we think that if we can love people good enough, it'll make us good enough.
You said it. You got it. You got it. And I realized after the fact that loving someone good enough was a way of affirming myself. I didn't know how to do it myself. I had to be tied to someone else. And that is why a lot of the relationships that we go into, they fail because it's like you're basing your enoughness on what someone else thinks of you when it really has to start here. And if you're willing to do all this commitment for others, are you willing to do the same for yourself? And a lot of times we don't. We say we do, but we don't.
We don't. And that's the thing with high achieving women like we are. I say I'm a recovering high achieving woman. I have hung up my put my little running shoes. I put them in the closet.
Look here,
That hustle and
I'm
grind
telling you.
thing. I can't do it no more. I just can't do it no more. But
Rest is
then
resistance. Yes.
I think, it's almost like we're set up though, because by the time we enter into school, everything is about our performance. Whether we get an A versus an F, even sometimes our parents don't think of it this way. They tell us they love us unconditionally, but that's not what we really experience. We experience if you do what I tell you to do, then it's going to be good for you. If you don't do what I
Right.
tell you to do, and see, I'm old school, that means I was going to go out to the bush, get my own switch.
Oh, listen here. I remember those switches. Yes. And don't bring back a sorry switch.
They'll send you back out and
Yes.
don't and get the longest, most intimidating one that wraps around your body 5 times every time they
Look
hit you.
here. I have to tell this story. My grandmother had a switch called Dr. Pepper, which basically was three switches that, because she got tired of us grabbing these sorry switches. She got them, braided it up, put little rubber bands on it. It was Dr. Pepper. You act up, you got to get Dr. Pepper. Why was it called Dr. Pepper? Because it will light your butt up. And that's what it was called.
Girl.
But yes. Yeah. And like with women, as women, it's even, oh my goodness, it's even more because we have this expectation to show up a certain way based on our gender or based on our roles as how we're supposed to show up as women. You know what I mean? So it's always this kind of, performing this way, you have to be smart. You have to be poised. You have to get things done. You have to get good grades. But we also have to, don't be too sexual, don't be too outgoing, be ambitious, but not too much. All these kind of different things that they put on us. And so it really does kind of throw you off. And so then you're going out here once you start getting into relationships and you're trying to build relationships, you're almost like, I want to be authentic, but I might need to dial back the authenticity because what I've learned is, and it's not agreeable to others, that makes me unworthy. So we really are set up. I agree with you 100%, especially in our society as Black women as well.
Oh, for real. Now, okay. So people hear the word authentic, right? And I want you to define it for the high achieving woman, knowing, this performance driven woman, because a lot of times I don't think we really know what authentic is.
Yeah, I think that, and I think it goes back to performance. When you're a high achieving woman, there is almost a tendency that your default is performance. And so when you're doing performative acts, a lot of times the real you has to take a back seat, right? And so when I think about authenticity, it's about, this is me completely who I am, regardless of how I perform or not, how I look or not, whatever. This is me when you strip everything away. And this is me in my happiest state. That is what I think is the main thing. Authenticity requires you to be in your most happiest and honest state. So you have to be authentic with who you want to be around. You want to be authentic with who you love. You want to be authentic about the type of music you like, the type of food that you want to do, the places that you want to go. And sometimes when you're authentic about that, society might think that there is some incongruence, right? And for us as professional, high achieving women, that happens all the time. There's judgment if we're, being too sexual. There's judgment if we decide we don't want to have kids. There's judgment if you decide that you don't want to marry, or, all the different things that are given to us as expectations of women. If that's not what you authentically want, you're not being authentic. But it's so hard for you to just not do that in the society. So if you can be authentic and manage to say, this is me, and even though the expectation is this is what I need for my happiness, or this is what I need to be whole. That's a level of authenticity I think that all high achieving women need to keep in mind. I understand we have to be on. We have to do all these kind of things, but at what expense? Please be honest with yourself. Please be honest with yourself.
And sometimes I think part of the whole high performing thing is because we really are trying to run away from our authentic self because somebody has made us feel like there's something wrong. And I know that you have a history in your childhood from trauma. And I do too.
Yes.
And I'm hard pressed to find, especially a Black woman, a woman of color who has not had some type of trauma in their past. Yeah. And I know for me personally, I had to resolve that the reason I was trying to make the A's, the reason I was trying to perform well enough was to absolve the part of me that had been told that I wasn't enough because of the way I was treated or what I was told about myself or what was done to me. So how can that person who is trying to achieve her way into her own good graces, how does she even find that authentic part of her?
Yeah. I think that one of the things that there's a couple of things, and you hit the nail on the head that at some point in our lives, and, when I work with my clients, sometimes one of my first questions, and it's so random, but usually it gets to that point. I ask, what is your first memory? Period. Not your first period. What's not your first memory of happiness? What is your first memory? And 95% of the time, that memory is going to be connected to something that was painful. It's going to be connected to something where you felt that you were supposed to be protected and you weren't. It is connected to a situation where you were scolded or made wrong for feeling like you're yourself. And and that continues throughout your childhood. And if it's left unresolved, you end up becoming this adult who carries on these same things. So, the thing is that, for example, I always tell this story, especially because I work with body image and eating disorders in the Black community. Growing up, I was the thickest girl in my class. At 10, I was 5'7". I was developed, all these kind of things. And I remember tennis skirts were all the rage. I don't know if you remember tennis skirts, but
I remember.
I could not find a tennis skirt in my size to save my life. Now, all the girls at school had tennis skirts. Now, mind you, in the rules, we're not supposed to wear them, but people were wearing them, whatever. I finally find one in my size when I go to school. And as soon as I walk in that door, and I was jamming too, I had the skirt, I had some Chuck Taylors. I was with it because I had been looking. And it's no sooner than I go into my first period, and this was high school, I get pulled out of the classroom. You got to go home. We don't allow tennis skirts. And as I'm looking out the door and I'm seeing, the mean girls all walking in with their Skittles color, and I'm like, Skittles colors, little tennis skirts on, and I'm like, well, why aren't you sending them home? And the response was, you can't do that because your body is different. And when I say I carried that my entire life, and it resulted in me trying to make myself smaller, it made me shield my sexuality. It made everything about, I can't do this because of the way I look. It took me so long to finally get to a point where I was comfortable with my body as it was. And that kind of stuff permeated into my relationships. It permeated into everything. I was so insecure, all of these kind of things. And so I think that, again, if the question is, how do you be authentic? You have to heal those moments when you were first told, this is what it is, this is what you're not. And say to yourself, but what if I say this is not the case? What if I say that actually I can wear whatever I want? What if I say that, I don't want to be a doctor, I want to be a dancer in New York? what if I say all of these things? And it's important for high achieving women to do that specifically if they're in fields that, necessarily don't speak to their purpose. And, a lot of times, but as a high achieving woman, we start out in something where the money is, where we're getting the bag, where everything is where it's supposed to be. But is that really where your heart is? Is that really what you want to do? And so start finding spaces, find out the root. Start finding spaces where you can start being more authentic. Be around people who will let you be authentic. If you're around someone that you can't share your whole self with, then why are you around them? Because the more that you, shut off those parts of you, it catches up with you and it shows up in other areas of your life. So you have to just start somewhere, but at least start with, when did you first start believing that falsehood?
That is good. That is so good. When did it happen? Because I was having a conversation with somebody not too long ago. Well, actually, it was I was on a Instagram Live. Actually, we were talking about submission, and we were talking about how a lot of times the reason why submission is a difficult thing is because you have to feel safe. You cannot,
Absolutely.
You can't make a person submit, but when they feel safe with you, there is no problem with them making room for your voice, making room for your experience and you expressing yourself. And it's more reciprocal. And I was thinking about that when it comes to what we're talking about. It's very difficult if you have been told that something's wrong with you. It's difficult. And it's also difficult when you're around
or you
people.
have been made to feel unsafe.
Exactly. You've been made to feel unsafe.
That sticks with you all the time.
That sticks with you all the time. And that's why I think what you do and what we both do in our own ways is so important, because so many people, and this is the thing that I think sometimes gets high performing, high achieving, mission driven women, strong women, is we want to figure it all out on our own. We think that if we need help with it, that somehow it makes us weak. But you can't see your own blind spot. You can't see it. And honestly, I've tried and I'm still working on it. But girl, when I'm good and triggered, when something bumps up into that pain, I mean, like hits it right. It's like everything goes blurred. Everything goes
it's like
blurred.
A blackout.
Exactly. You can't make the differentiation between friend and foe in that moment. You just gonna respond. So how do you help people begin to look within, begin to dive in, those that they can't really do it on their own. They just really
absolutely.
can't. They really can't.
Yeah. And so, and I think that's where, the importance of, and I think that's what made me become a counselor too. Because a lot of times the work that you do is connected to your own pain, and that's what, we talked about that in P2P, right?
Girl.
Shout out to Patrice and the P2P sisters, but that's kind of how it was. And so one of the things that I recognize, especially for those who have experienced trauma, and, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that as Black women, there is a genetic trauma lineage that we have. It's in our DNA. The body keeps the score. There's a book by, I think it's James Vanderbilt, and he talks about literally how trauma is ingrained in our DNA, and we pass it on to our kids the same way we might pass, gray eyes or, curly hair, etc. And so when I'll say that it's partly reason why I left the U.S. too. I was tired of being in this trauma response, right? And so I had to and what ended up happening, I did it late. I had to get professional help. My deepest, darkest childhood trauma was when I was 10 years old and my mother was murdered by the man that she was dating. And that happened when I was 10. Wow. And this is something I saw physically, I experienced physically, everything. And I made it all the way to about 28, 30, maybe a little bit younger than that, where my relationships, friendships, especially romantic relationships, they were just in shambles. I went to therapy for that. And I started unpacking for the first time in my life what happened to my mother. And I remember saying to my therapist, I'm just really upset that I didn't, stab him when he would come into my mother's room, or he would come into the room and try to sexually abuse us. I hate that I didn't go and tell the police because I was scared. All these things I didn't do. And she had to look at me and she said, you were 10. When was the last time you looked at a 10-year-old? Is that a reasonable expectation? But I think that's the issue. There's an expectation for us to be so strong that even the worst traumas, we're just supposed to be like, okay, just keep it going. You know what I mean? And that's unhealthy. That's unhealthy. And so it's just kind of like you have to, regardless of how small or how big it is, if it's something that was salient and something that put you in the sense of where you felt unsafe, it's your responsibility to break that down. And then more likely you can't do it by yourself because you can't see the blind spot. So for me, it's therapy. For others, I'm always going to be a big proponent of therapy. I think the other part of it too is who you are spiritually, right? And, this one is one of the things that I think that requires the most work for a lot of people, especially those who have been traumatized, is that you are told the same way that you are told you are a certain way. A lot of us are told how God is. A lot of us are told how these people show up. And the thing is that, but what if that version of your higher power is not helping you resolve the pain in your heart? Are you willing to go into relationship and learn this person? And the way of learning yourself spiritually is to learn yourself. And so that's why I originally said committing to yourself. If you're going to get through this, if you want to get through the trauma and you're trying to fix it, you have to commit to yourself. And a lot of people don't know what that looks like. And that's really the journey to the healing that you need, is to really just be able to say, okay, I'm going to commit to myself wholeheartedly and find the blind spots, and I'm going to get the help that I need. I'm going to seek the spiritual counsel I need. I'm going to do all of this kind of stuff. If you can do that commitment, make that commitment. And the thing is, it's hard. It's so nasty and hard.
It's hard.
And that's where we mess up, because you high achieving. It's like, nope, I got meetings today, can't do it. Or nope, I've been too busy being the strong person. I don't have time to break this down right now. Okay. Or the fact that, hey, I've gotten this far. Why should I do anything now? And your romantic relationships are definitely look at your romantic relationships and that'll tell you where your work needs to be done. I feel like that's the clear mirror.
That's the mirror. That's the mirror. And it's funny because I had to learn that myself.
That's the mirror.
Because you can think you're fine. You can think you are feeling fine. You're doing, you can even find your purpose. You can do all these wonderful things.
Yeah.
But the real test of just how healed you are, I have to agree, is what your intimate relationships are like. That is truly, it holds up a mirror. And you said something, Alexia, that I wanted to talk about, to explore even further, the whole spirituality thing. Because also I think the Black church is in our DNA too. I'm hard pressed to find somebody that didn't have a praying grandmother, or something like that.
Oh yes. I'm here by her prayers.
Yes, sir. Somebody prayed for me, had me on their mind. But the thing about it is, And I'm
Yeah.
sure you can unpack for us even further. There is a difference between spirituality, connecting with your spiritual self, and your church self. Sometimes they are, one flows into the other. But I'm sad to say, and I've been in church all my life. I mean, I've been church, like holiness church, like don't wear earrings, don't wear pants church. I mean, like that kind of church where
I remember you said that,
where you church, the whole church culture defined everything for you. And sadly, if you struggled with anything, struggle with humanity, your sexuality, your gender, struggle in any way, guess who you blame for it? That old slewfoot, that devil, that Satan, that enemy. You could blame it or him for it. And if you, quote unquote, were spiritual, then you could bind him, rebuke him, whatever. And that was supposed to absolve you of the struggle. So if you were still struggling, then you weren't rebuking him right, or you weren't spiritual enough, and you needed to check your walk with God, because that was an indication that you weren't as close to God as you needed to be. And that's very problematic. This is real talk here.
And so, my training, I'm a clinical mental health counselor, but one of the things I love about my program is the Loyola program in Maryland. It's not in existence anymore, and I'm so sad, because it was a pastoral counseling program. Pastoral not meaning like it was a pastor, but there is a scientific kind of structure or academic structure of dealing with mental health. But a lot of times the spiritual is not included because they feel like that's something that cannot be scientifically boxed, etc. However, how can one's spirituality be completely separate than their ability to heal and who they are, especially if it's how they grew up, right? It can heal, it can hurt, right? But the thing is that you have to find a way to get in relationship or an authentic understanding of the higher power that you need. And the higher power that you need may not be the one that you were told exists. For myself, my God is not punitive. My God is just as cheerful and loving and excited about life as anybody else, because growing up for me, I was always tired of feeling that the person I need to go to, or God who I'm supposed to go to, I can't go to him authentic. I can't go to him with sexual thoughts. I can't go to him because, I can't even, I can't even say something, say a prayer if I have a drink in my hand. I mean, it's just, there was all these parts of me that I couldn't go to my God authentically for. And again, kind of going back to relationships and being authentic, how can you truly be happy if there's parts of you that you cannot show up fully at, right?
Yeah.
How? There's no way. You know what I mean? And especially if the relationship is with yourself. If you think about when you're in relationships with people, you accept those people, you accept them for their flaws, you love them regardless, you know, all these kind of things. If you can't do that for yourself, the first place you probably learned it is that you feel like you're not worthy, because God says, I can only accept you if you're this, that, and the third. And so I think that, if you are someone who's working with someone, I always say, don't be afraid to look at the relationship that you have with God. Don't be afraid to question that, because the thing is, if this is a relationship I have with whoever it is, God, however you identify, whatever is sacred in your life, if this is something that's purely the energy that's helping you to be fulfilled, to live your purpose, to create the life that you want, you have to be in relationship with that thing so authentically, so 100%, so without abandon, that there's no way that the traumas and the ills of life can break you down and keep you from recovering. And that's why I always talk about the gifts and disappointment, because it was my disappointments when things didn't go well and didn't go right, but to be able to have a relationship with self and a relationship with spirit, to say that I'm worthy. And this is all a bigger part of the beautiful, amazing life that God, of my understanding, wants me to have. Because again, my God isn't punitive. That's what I had to get to, mm-hmm. So even when I'm not perfect, my God is still like, you, my babe, I love you, and you can't do no wrong in my eyes. Okay, I see that. I don't like that, but you're still my baby, and everything that I have for yours is going to be yours, right? Yeah. When you have that type of unconditional love spiritually, you have that for yourself. I tell all of my clients, one of the best ways to get to know about who you are spiritually with God is write to him or her or whatever. And like literally have conversations, write letters, because sometimes you need it tangible. I needed not only a non-punitive God, I needed a tangible representation. So prayer is great for me, but I needed to be able to write it down. I want to be able to go back and see what we were talking about. I wanted to be able to write down when I'm pissed, when I'm happy, all this kind of stuff. And that helped me become more authentic. So it's all connected when it comes to being enough. You have to, all those parts of you have to be intertwined.
I love that you said that, because that was the way I found my way to being authentic, is I journaled. I had been so indoctrinated that I could not audibly pray to God how I really felt, what I really thought, without feeling such condemnation from all the scriptures I had been fed all my life, and their take on the scriptures. Not so much that the scriptures were wrong, but their interpretation of it, to the point that I could not say, God, I hate him. I just really hate him. Just let that ride and wait for him to respond.
Thank you.
I would say, Lord, I hate him, but I know your word says that I shouldn't, I start going through those scriptures and I know your word says this and I know this. So Lord, you're going to have to help me, because I really want to please you. And I know this is wrong.
Right. And then this is the thing. And God's saying here looking at you, but baby, I know you really do hate him.
Yeah. Or
you ain't got to lie to me.
Yeah, exactly. Or even if you don't, he's okay with your words. He's okay with your expression of it. He knows how to interpret what you really, really mean and the source of the pain that is coming from. And we don't trust God to be able to decode thoughts and decode our words and read between the lines. And we don't give him or her, or whatever way you refer to that higher power, we don't give, and I call him because I needed him to be a him. You don't give him credit for being there even when you were conceived, and following your journey all the way through, and understanding why you are the way you are, and why you relate the way you relate, and why you respond the way you respond. And we act like he hadn't been here, like he don't know what's happening, and we got to inform him, but also let him know, but we don't mean to be like this, though. That's why we need you to help. That's why we need you to help, because we don't mean to be like this, because I really want you to love me, and I know you can't love me like this. And so many people are walking around with that kind of weight. And for a long time, I had to journal my feelings, because I was too busy trying to dissect them and analyze them. And say it the right way. And journaling gave me a way to just write it. And I had to do that for a long, long, long time. And then it finally got to a point where I could audibly pray to God. And I remember there was one time, very telling, I was talking to God about something, and I literally heard this voice inside of me, this awareness, I'll say, inside of me that said, I didn't ask you for all that. All I did is ask you how you felt. Because I heard it say, how do you feel? And I started talking about how I felt. Then I started trying to explain how I felt and why I felt that way. And I know it isn't right for me to feel that way. And I know I shouldn't feel that way. And I just messed it all up. And after a while, I was like, no, stop. Listen, I just asked you how you felt.
Right. Yes.
That's all. And it took a while. I can say it took a whole week of practicing.
Yeah.
Praying how I felt, no chaser.
No chaser.
No chaser. No explanation, no censoring, no judging, just saying it. And for a whole week, literally, I would just practice doing it. And I didn't get struck by lightning.
Look here.
And I didn't quote get cursed with a curse. All these things that people tell you before I could say how I felt without any shame or guilt or inner condemnation.
Yes, because that's trust. That's trust. You talk about people don't have a way of trusting God to do whatever he's supposed to do. That's trust. And I think that is also connected to the commitments you make to yourself. Because I think that a lot of times we fall back on the commitments we make to ourselves because we don't trust that God's going to make a way for us anyway, right? And I think that especially happens in relationships. I think that all of us who are talking about, I'm taking time out for myself. No, you're not. Because the thing is that you might not, for example, you might not be in relationship with someone. You might be dating or whatever the case is, but you're still distracted. You won't spend the time that you lay on the phone on your bed with yourself or with God. You will not sit up here and allow yourself to at least fathom that, I'm 40 something. I'm not in a relationship. I haven't had any kids yet, blah, blah, blah. Oh, everything's whatever. And you will try to move things around and say, well, I'm just going to, I'm just going to, focus on myself. But there is still an intention that you have of making something shift. And that has made me realize in those situations where I'm not trusting, in those situations where I feel like I got to prove myself to this new person I'm dating, or I have to show up in a certain way with certain people. I have to be a certain way. If I remember that I am precious and I'm okay, I'm loved unconditionally, that if I decide I want to take a whole year off, and I'm not talking to and I'm giving this to women who have an issue with a lot of failed relationships. It's amazing how many people don't think they can do it. But literally, can you commit to, I'm not taking numbers, I'm not talking on the phone, I'm not going on dates. I am committing to myself like that. And I'm not talking for a month, a year. Make it 2. Do whatever you have to. You're not willing to do it. Because the thing is, you're saying, but I'm going to lose a year of time. Well, where's your trust at? Where's your trust? And if anything, that's time for you to learn how to commit to yourself so you can be better equipped to commit to somebody else.
Yeah, because if you're not enough for you, then how are you going to connect with somebody who thinks you're enough? If you're not interesting enough, if you're not enough for you to spend quality time, we're not just talking about getting your hair and nails done. Because a lot of times when people talk about taking time for themselves, usually it's finding a way to get away from themselves.
Yeah.
Think about it. Because when I go on a trip by myself, usually I'm trying to figure out, now what am I going to do while I'm on the trip? You're really trying to get away from that part of yourself that's causing you pain and discomfort. And you think, if I go on a trip, if I go get my hair done, I go get my nails done, and ain't nothing wrong with any of those things. But if they are keeping you from truly looking within and doing that inner work, that is hard. It's hard until it's not. It takes a lot to dig past all those layers that have been put on you for years, and all the things that have been calcified because we've neglected our own hearts and our own souls and our own well-being, that it will take some time to get down underneath.
It's going to take some time.
It's going to take some time. And when you were talking, I was like, yeah, so how can, even when it comes to your spiritual connection, the reason I think a lot of people hang out at church or hang out at work, they're workaholics, or they're forever chasing something or doing something or involved in something, is because you can't be intimate with yourself. If you can't be intimate with yourself, and I mean your divine self, which is where the spiritual link really is, right?
Yeah, and I think that that's connected also to, and that's the thing, all of this is, is all connected. You talked about surrendering, right? This pandemic has really forced people to be in situations where they're out of sorts, especially if you're an outgoing person, all these kind of things. You have all of these things that is saying, you know what, I probably should just stop dating for now. I should probably not entertain anyone right now. I should probably just focus on myself. You know what? I really need to get clear on who I am spiritually. I'm going to focus on that. I actually, I need to get into therapy. This situation with my child is really there. You can get so many, but what a lot of people do is they double down. They'll be like, no, okay, well, I'm going to join a tennis group, and I'm going to do that. And I'm going to, I'm going to date, but everybody that I date, we're just going to, talk on the phone or whatever the case is. You're still exchanging energy, right? You're still not giving yourself that focus, right? And people will double down when sometimes you just have to say like this, enough, surrender. I know you don't want to go silent. I know you don't want to just be with yourself. I know you don't want to, because it's scary. But the gift after that, and in my understanding, again, there's a lesson in every disappointment. You're going to be disappointed. I have to be in a situation where I'm not going to date anybody, because I kept being in these failed relationships over and over again. And it took my spiritual life coach to say, nope, you can't date. You got to just stop. And I'm like, I can't talk to people on the phone. Nope. Can't go on dates. Nope. What if I meet somebody and they give me a number? Nope. Put it in the trash. Are you crazy? I'm 30 something. I'm 30 something. You want me to be single for the rest of my life? But the thing was that I kept messing up every other place. And so it was just like, okay, Alexia, if you're not willing to commit to yourself, just commit to yourself. 6 months gonna pass either way. A year gonna pass either way. What do you have to lose to give that commitment to yourself? And when I came out on the other side of that, those failed relationships were a no more. I can be happy in a relationship. I can be happy outside of a relationship. And most importantly, the relationship that's most important with is me. So I'm flourishing. And it's something really beautiful when you can be in a relationship with someone else and focus on you at the same time and have someone to join you.
That's the thing, Lexi. When you said that, I'm like, yes, because isn't that's a problem that I hear a lot from women that say they lose themselves in relationships. They don't know how to maintain their rhythm, and somebody else's rhythm gets added. When somebody else comes into the picture, it throws their rhythm off. And so it's easy to, I can be myself. I got my little thing going. I'm doing it. Then you throw yours in, and I can't, you got your own step, and I'm trying to get my own step, and it ain't working. And I think that's what ends up happening, where people get in relationships. They think they're fine. Then they get in relationships, and the reason they lose themselves is because they haven't done the self-work to be able to maintain their inner steady. I love how Michelle Obama called it your inner steady, where you can be mindful of your inner steady, even though somebody else is in your life with their own way of being. And it does, it it takes work to know who you are and maintain your sense of self, maintain your sense of value, or like I say, be able to maintain your voice, your value, and your vision when there's somebody else in your life. But that was part of my work as well when I was going to therapy and a relationship coach, was how do I learn to stay lock and step with who I am without disappearing into somebody else's agenda, presence, whatever needs, especially after, as women, for many of us, we've been socialized to disappear in our relationship, especially if it's a patriarchal one. You're socialized to put the man first, or it's what he wants, it's what he needs, it's what he thinks. And so you defer to it because you're socialized to do it. And it seems almost foreign to you to maintain who you are if he's saying, but no, I think this.
Yeah. You know? And I think, and that's the thing, you know, again, and I keep going back to these same things: trust, surrender. The level of trust you have to have in yourself and spirit and who you are spiritually, or just as a being. The level of trust you have to be able to walk into any relationship with someone else and be able to say that I'm enough just by myself. And you can add on that you trust yourself enough that I can be who I am, and that's not going to affect this relationship. As a matter of fact, it's going to make it better. That is when you know that you have done the work. But until you can get to that point where you can trust yourself to continue to be your authentic self in a relationship, until you can get to that, it's not going to work. Or you're going to just have a lifetime in relationships where you're shrinking yourself, where you have to go home and take the tennis skirt off while everybody else has theirs. So it's really, that's really what it boils down to.
Yeah, and I had to learn it. I had to literally, like you said, I had to go to somebody else and sit on somebody else's couch to figure that part out, because I wasn't raised to have my own voice. I wasn't raised to find my value from within. It was always, well, what do you think about it? Or what do you say about it? The authorities, if they disagree with me, then they were right and I was wrong. And the thing about it is, I had not really learned that I could be trusted until my late 40s. That's a long time of adulting. It took my late 40s before I figured out I could be trusted. And it had to be proven. And that's why I tell my husband the relationship I had before him was necessary, because that was the relationship where I proved to myself that I could be trusted. And when I realized that I could be trusted, then I met him.
That's how it goes.
I did not meet my forever love until then.
And that's the other thing too, is that for those of you who are having those failed relationships, baby, find the divine, the divine, beautiful gift in that, because you are getting feedback directly from the universe of what it is that you can work on. But if you're too busy being hurt, if you're too busy being resentful, if you're too busy doubling down, saying that, nope, I did everything. No, if you keep having those disappointments, use that. Use that information. It's going to tell you the truth about who you are, regardless of if someone was terrible to you. Because the thing is, there's something about you that allowed something like that to manifest. My grandmother always talks about, you're the gatekeeper. If you are the gatekeeper, if anything gets inside the gate, because you left it open. you know? So you have to be, so the thing is, look at those disappointments. My thing to anybody listening, if you just got out of a bad relationship, good. Congratulations. You have the data that you need to let you know what you need to do. You have the data that lets you know that you need to get really fiercely with being authentic with who you are, to trust yourself, to commit to yourself. So you trust your inner knowing and not get into stuff that you know that's not going to work anyway. Because a lot of times we know it's the stuff that we already knew that breaks us up later. So anybody who's listening, make sure you do that and be willing to do the work, do the stuff that's uncomfortable, that makes you have to really just get stuck with yourself. And I'm telling you, the beauty that comes out on the other side of that, being able to trust yourself, being able to know that you are enough, that's a love that is going to call the type of love that you want into your life. But you have to be willing to do that work. You have to be willing to break it down, because the cracks is how the light gets in.
Alexia, you were worth the wait, and I appreciate
you were worth the wait too.
The nuggets that you share with our listeners. Can you tell them how they can get in contact with you? Because if you need some therapy, you better go to Alexia, because she can take you there, honey.
Look, I will take you there. Look, look, I'm all about it. So thank you for the opportunity. I love having this conversation. Yes, I am on Instagram. It is I am Alexia Nicole Smith. You can also go to my website, which is thedivineperseverance.com. Again, the divine perseverance. This is a journey. This is a divine right for us to persevere in all of these disappointments. We're going to use them to fulfill our divine purposes in our life. And I just thank you so much for this opportunity to share with your listeners. I hope it touched somebody.
Oh, I'm sure it did. I'm sure it did. Well, listeners, you know the way I like to leave it. You are worthy. You are worth it. You are more than enough. Bye now. You have just listened to the Enough Factor podcast with your host, Suzette Vernon. To get notified of new episodes or to dig deeper into today's topic, become a subscriber. And while you're at it, tell us how we're doing and what topics you're interested in. We appreciate your feedback and your reviews. Until next time, remember, you are worthy, you are worth it, you are enough.